Okay, yes, I guess we are experimenting with ourselves.
Yes, different states of being.
You also mentioned that specific ecosystems have been destroyed and that as a result, that has helped to unleash this virus.
Yes, and others as well throughout your history.
So in terms of us rebuilding those ecosystems, can you make some suggestions as far as what the individual can do on their own, as well as other steps that we could take to restore these ecosystems?
Well, again, it's about taking the actions that are germane for the reality that you prefer to live in. So this is really, in some sense, quite obvious. If you have destroyed the ecosystem, restore the ecosystem. Plant trees, clean your water, clean your air, create actions that are in alignment with the idea of the kind of world that you prefer to see. So if you want to see a more forested world, if you want to see a world with cleaner water, or you want to see or breathe in a world with cleaner air, do the things that are available to you with your technology or your abilities to actually create those things, create new environments, recreate them. It's as simple as that. Now, there are other things that you can possibly do, but remember that physical action is the language of physical reality. Therefore, the more you can actually physically do to recreate those ecosystems, bring them back, restore the world to a more natural state in all the ways that you can, find sources of energy that don't pollute, create them, spread them out over your planet in one way, shape, or form. All these things can help you begin to reach out, begin to make more connections with others, share ideas, open up your imaginations for how you can create new societies, new systems that have less impact negatively upon your planet. In some senses, many of you are beginning to do this, but the idea is keep doing it and do it in greater and greater ways with more and more people who are excited about restoring your world to a state of balance. These things are relatively obvious. Just do more of them.
I don't know how that's transmitting right now, but suddenly around me, there's all these horns honking and everything.
Trying to get your attention.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so when we were talking about restoring ecosystems, you know, they're actually quite complex because there's so many varieties and species within an ecosystem.
You have the ability to do it. Do your research and take the actions that are necessary. Just do the best you can. Remember, it's the actions that make the difference. Even if a particular ecosystem is not actually restored on the version of Earth you're on right now, taking the action in that direction is one of the things that will help shift you to the versions of Earth that will actually have more balanced ecosystems. Remember, you never change the world you're on.
Right, and who knows what that path will lead to if people are trying to rebuild an ecosystem. So many things can happen in that process as interactions between people, interactions with animals, many things that we can't even imagine at this point.
But just follow the formula and take the actions and you'll shift yourself to versions of Earth that are more and more representative of the idea of balance. And don't forget, it's not that you live in nature. You are nature. So balance yourselves as well.
So another question that's come up around this is the idea that it's a virus, not a bacteria that we're dealing with, and the idea that viruses have consciousness.
Everything is made of consciousness. It just depends on how that consciousness is expressed. It may not be expressed in the same way that a human or a dolphin or any other animal expresses consciousness, but nevertheless, there is an expression of it. It's just that it's going to be a very foreign or alien version of the expression of consciousness that you may not necessarily be able to relate to exactly.
It's interesting because a lot of people have expressed the idea of they want to communicate with the virus. They want to get to know it. They want to create homeopathic ideas of how to work with it. Is this sensible in the sense of...
It can be if it is not done out of fear. Again, remember, everything is about resonance. It's about frequency. It's about vibration, including communication with different forms of life. or even inanimate things. So the idea is to find the frequencies that will allow you the best opportunity to commune with it in a way that isn't detrimental to yourself. Again, you'll be creating what you might call a safety zone by creating a simulacrum, a third reality in which the communications take place, so that your reality directly is not affected by your decision to alter your vibration in your respective reality. Altering the vibration in the third reality to allow for the communication to occur is like having a communication in a safety zone.
So I know, like, from a shamanic perspective, the idea of communicating with DNA and with plant medicine and just, communicating with plants, does that open you up to bringing that energy into your body? Or that's what you're talking about by creating a simulacrum?
Yes.
You have a buffer so that you can communicate with an energy such as a virus, but not at the same time invite it into your physical being.
Correct. It's like communicating through an airlock. Now, here's something else to understand about the idea of creating what you might perceive as an elimination of that particular expression of a virus in your reality altogether. And this goes for any kind of disease as well. Many people are beginning on your planet to explore the idea of using resonant frequencies in order to allow them to mitigate the idea of disease-carrying organisms or disease-causing organisms. But the basic secret of that, the basic clue for using frequencies in that way is, A, find the frequency of the organism itself, and then simultaneously, as you are embedding the organism in its own frequency, if you embed it in a harmonic of another frequency 11 times greater, then that organism will actually cease to thrive in your reality.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
As I drop any and all of my fear-based thought process and beliefs, what will my experience be with regard to my family members and my close friends and my children who may or may not be able to do these things? Particularly, I think there's a concern about people's children, like they can't understand this. How will the children come with them in this?
All right, well, maybe they will and maybe they won't. First of all, you have to understand that if you accelerate yourself, you will probably then be capable of having the inspiration and imagination to know how to communicate to your children in ways that will allow them to understand these concepts as well, and perhaps then make choices to go along, to shift along with you. That's number one. However, number two, you still have to treat children as individuals, as conscious beings that make their own choices and have their own life path. So the idea is that, yes, there may be situations where different individuals, be they family members or relationships or children, may not ultimately be capable of making the same choices and creating, or at least projecting, versions of themselves in the reality that you are going to. But again, you have to allow them to make their own choices. All you can do is accelerate yourself so that you have the greatest capability of teaching them how they can do so for themselves as well. And this goes for anyone else. You become a living example. You know exactly what to say. You understand these principles clearly enough that you can pass them along, and then give them the best opportunity, as we have said, to practice these principles so they understand how to use them, to understand that they're self-empowered, to understand the consequences of their choices, so they can make mature choices as they grow. And they will decide in that sense then where they truly need to be. But that's as much as you can do. You have to trust the whole process, that even though someone may be born to you as a child, they're still a separate individual that has their own path. And sometimes their path may not always include being in touch with you. Now, maybe they'll go out, maybe they'll come back in. It just depends. But you have to treat everyone as an infinite, indestructible being. And if somebody doesn't understand something now in this life, they'll understand it somewhere. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. No one will ever be permanently lost to you, because on some other level, you will reconnect. And perhaps on that level, you will understand more clearly why they took the path they did, and it will make sense to you at that time. But you will always be bound by unconditional love if you are unconditional in your loving.
So the idea that what will come up for many individuals under the scenario you just described is their fear of loss, their attachment to other people and things like that, and possibly even holding themselves back or making a choice to not move forward because of the anticipation that it could create some kind of loss.
Yes, and this is where you anchor yourself to a reality that you're saying you don't prefer, because you have a definition that there is such a thing as loss. Change your definition. Understand the greater selves that you are. See yourselves from a greater perspective, a higher perspective, where you know you are always in touch on some level. And that's what we're saying is when you accelerate your own vibration, one of the symptoms of going into a higher version of physical reality is you'll have the capability in your senses to be able to sense more of that being, more of that personality on another level. And you will know that you're always in touch. You will know that you're never really out of touch, even if temporarily the personality projection of that person may seem to be missing from your life, but they're not really missing if you are capable of communicating with them on a higher level. So it serves you to know you're always in touch by accelerating yourself forward and not anchoring yourself to a reality that has a definition of loss and disconnection in it. Then all you're doing is reinforcing the idea that they're missing, when in fact there are many aspects of their being that may be attempting to communicate with you, but then you're the one that's missing because you're not allowing yourself to go into a state where you could perceive that more of that person, not necessarily the personality, but more of that being may be attempting to talk to you. And you're not paying attention because you're not in the right frame of mind and the right state of being to know that you never actually lose anything. You just shift to a different level of understanding and communication.
So fundamentally, it always comes back to dealing with your own state of being and whether or not you're staying in a positive state or you're succumbing, in a sense, to negative beliefs.
Not succumbing, not succumbing.
Not succumbing.
Watch the definition. Choosing. Yes. Stay in the driver's seat. Stay empowered. Use empowering definitions. Not succumbing, choosing. Because when you know you're choosing, you have something to work with that you can change. If you say succumbing, then there's nothing you can do. You are powerless. Or at least you're using your power to pretend that you're powerless. And if you don't prefer to do that, watch your definitions, because they determine how you experience everything in your reality.
This question kind of ties into this also, because someone asked if you can talk about the transition from helpless infant to fully creating adult, and whether infants are actually helpless, and is this a gradual transition, and anything, that we can do to support our children in that
We're just going to give you a very brief answer on that. The idea, again, is that, yes, of course, in terms of physical reality, obviously children that are very, very young need the support and guidance of the adults. But the idea, again, is in allowing them to become powerful, mature adults, you must allow them at whatever age seems reasonable to you to first and foremost not pick up from you telepathically the idea of fear-based beliefs. So be clear within yourself as best as you can so you don't pass those ideas of fear along to them. Then again, as you are able to teach them using your own imagination, the idea of in a safe place that your imagination has created for them physically, teaching them through actual actions the consequences of their choices, teaching them that they are as powerful as they need to be to attract whatever they need in life without harming themselves or anyone else, and adapting any lessons in physical reality you believe are important for them to learn, adapting them to their excitement instead of dampening their excitement to fit into the lesson. These three things can empower a child to become a mature adult very rapidly, because they're already an eternal being. They're already a high intelligence. And in many cases, remember that young children haven't forgotten as much of who they are. And therefore, they can actually be great teachers for the so-called adults that may themselves simply be children in the process of maturing.